When you're advertising anything, of course you want to suppress the negative aspects of it. Your husband's doctor nonchalantly prescribes him something for his insomnia with no warning that this pill could lead to your death.
Documents that I got out from under seal in my lawsuit that I've used.
From Pfizer?
From Pfizer.
Wow. Sealed documents.
Sealed documents. So I have binders worth of documents that have shown that the FDA knew about the risk of suicide, Pfizer knew about the risk of suicide, and didn't tell the public. So there is power in lawsuits, and we need to be able to hold companies accountable and get inside their files.
International drug safety advocate Kim Witzak has been working on getting informed consent in the pharmaceutical drug industry since the early 2000s. And now, of course, she is on this new frontier of the latest technology in the shots, testifying before the FDA on boosters this year. So it was so great to sit down with her and talk about not only informed consent, but how advertising plays into this in the relationship between the media and these drug companies. So before we get into this, and let me tell you, this was an hour-long podcast, very interesting. And obviously YouTube is not going to accept all of it. So the full, raw, uncensored interview is up on my website, ivoryhecker.com, linked in description. You'll find the part I put here on YouTube very interesting, though. Before we get to that, I got to shout out my sponsor for this video. Surveys show 35% of people don't think their anti-aging cream works. The truth is the anti-aging industry, like a lot of industries, is filled with exaggerated claims, but there's a secret. The secret is Glow with Ivory, which is one of the best anti-aging serums I've used. This is one of the products right here, Ageless Bright. Okay, I've got the link in description to this company, which is fantastic, out of BioTrust. People report seeing their anti-aging cream start to take effect on making them look and feel younger as early as 7 days in. And with my link, you get a 38% discount. So go to the link in my description or type in glowwithivory.com, glowwithivory.com. Hey guys, I'm thrilled to be joined by Kim Witzak, international drug safety advocate, and also 25-year history in advertising. She has a lot of insight on the ties between the pharmaceutical companies and the media through advertising, but you've also testified in front of the US Senate on the FDA and on these new vaccines. So I can't wait to hear your insight on what you are learning as far as drug safety in 2021. But first, tell me how you got into this drug safety, because it's personal for you.
Yeah, I like to call myself an accidental advocate, because I never set out to do this work that I'm doing right now. This would not be what you would ever choose to do. But back in, it was personal, back in 2003, my husband of almost 10 years, Woody, had just started his dream job with a startup company, went to his doctor because he was having trouble sleeping. And the doctor sent him home with a 3-week pack of Zoloft antidepressant samples and said, take this, it'll help you take the edge off and help you sleep. And I happened to be out of the country the first 3 weeks he was on the drug, but I come home to Woody, and Woody came in the back door, and he was drenched through his blue dress shirt, and he sat on the floor and he's like, Kim, you gotta help me. I don't know what's happening to me. It's like my head's outside my body, looking in, help me. And he's like rocking back and forth. And I was like, So I remember we calmed him down, and I'm like, he was like, we tried praying, breathing, yoga, all this stuff. And then he called his doctor and told him what happened. And the doctor said, you got to give it 4 to 6 weeks to kick in. Well, the next week of Woody's life, every time he'd come home, he'd be like, what do you think about this? I'm going to beat this feeling in my head. Everything was beat this feeling in his head. So I was out of town on another shoot in Detroit. And I hadn't heard from Woody all day long, which is like we always talk many times during the day. And I finally called my parents and I said, would you do me a favor? Like, would you go and check on Woody? Because, he has been having trouble sleeping. So I'm thinking maybe he hit his head or something. all of a sudden, I'm still on set and it's about 8:30 at night and I get a call. It's bad. It's bad. I'm like, what do you mean it's bad? I'm like, Woody is dead. I'm like, what? They're like, I go, Woody, my dad goes, Woody's dead. I go, what do you mean he's dead? He goes, he's hanging. I'm like, what? Like literally, at that moment, my whole life changed. And I'm sitting in Detroit. Everybody's, at home. They call the, the coroner, the police, everybody. And the coroner comes in, and then my family went over there. The coroner calls me and asked if Woody was on any medication. And I said, no, one thing he just started taking, but I don't know the name of, I don't even know what it is. Cause that's how clueless I was about, we were taking drugs. And she goes, oh, there's a bottle of Zoloft sitting on the kitchen counter. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. And she goes, we're going to take it with us. It might have something to do with his death. So that's clue number one. The other clue was the front page of our newspaper had an article that said the UK finds link between antidepressants and suicide in teens. And so those two things, obviously my life, I was just trying to figure out how to get home. But my brother-in-law that night Googled Zoloft and suicide, and all this stuff came up, and realized that the FDA had hearings on Zoloft, or it wasn't on Zoloft, it was on Prozac, and all these random suicides that were happening in 1991. 1991, and this is 2003. And so almost immediately, because intuitively in the deepest part of me, I knew that they're like, what do you love life? We just planned, he wasn't depressed. He didn't get it for depression. He didn't have a history of depression or any other mental health issues. So we had just planned our 10-year anniversary trip. We just planned our trip with his parents. We were trying to have kids, all of that. I'm like, what do you like? Would not like, this is not how he was not, everybody was telling me he must have been depressed. I'm like, no, I know him. So I and my brother-in-law, this became our mission to get warnings put on antidepressants. So almost within 2 months of Woody's death, we were on the plane out to DC trying to talk to anybody. We met with our congressman and who introduced us to other people and started taking all this research. And I still have binders and I can show you out to DC to try to get somebody, because look at the UK is looking into it. The FDA knew about it in 91, did nothing. And so fast forward, I also had a lawsuit against Pfizer, a wrongful death failure to warn lawsuit, where we were able to get all these documents out from under seal that showed that the FDA and Pfizer knew about the suicide risk back in the late 80s in their clinical trials, did nothing about it. So back in 91, I go 13 years. So our mission was to get black box warnings, suicide warnings put on these drugs. So we were at that time, the FDA was having a lot of hearings and congressional hearings as well of what the companies knew, didn't tell, but it was all about kids, right? So we started going out to DC, and I mean, I don't know how many times I've been out there, and it was just like, we're going to keep showing up because there's no possible way that if this happened to Woody, who else, and thousands, I think, that from the time, that they've known, but, they always kept saying, oh, it's depression or something, using that. So anyways, eventually we did get black box warnings. The FDA put black box warnings on antidepressants, the whole class of drugs, the SSRIs, in 2004. And we pushed to get it on adults, all ages, but eventually it got put on in 2006, up to 24 years old. And to this day, there's still no black box suicide warnings on antidepressants for all ages. Although,
So your husband's age group is still
it's not in there. However, it's really interesting, the power of documents that have come out. I mean, I only say this because one of the documents that was in Pfizer's original clinical trials, but it didn't come to the FDA. It was in the UK regulatory, the information they had to provide to the Irish Medical Association, like the FDA. Mm-hmm. And it said the risk of suicide was highest in 1 to 30 days, 31 to 40 years old, and 50 milligrams. All three of those were Woody. Yeah. And we hand delivered those documents to the FDA that came out from under seal. in the lawsuit.
Brings me to what I want to get into with you is the advertising aspect of big pharma right now, and advertising aspect of drug safety. I love that you do advertising and you're a drug safety expert, because when you're advertising anything, of course you want to suppress the negative aspects of it. Okay.
Right.
So take me through, I don't know, from your perspective, how maybe this has affected the minds of average Americans as far as how media is in bed with big pharma through advertising.